What?
Guess what came today?
The radiator for the Fairlane? What? The Godzilla?
Mm-hmm.
How do we open it? Let's open it. Okay, so the Godzilla says it's the same belt housing bolt pattern as the 4.6, 5.4, and Coyote, but I want to know if it's the same, if the 8-bolt flywheel and everything will bolt onto it, because we're putting it in a 2011 Mustang. So I have this flywheel which we had from a 2014 Mustang. So I just took the flex plate off that it came with. I'm gonna see if this flywheel bolts up. So far, it looks like the holes align, but I can't tell if they're all perfect. Looks like it, which will make this way easier then, because we can just swap everything from the supercharged Coyote that he had into this, or onto this engine. So this will speed things up quite a bit, so we don't have to track some flywheel specific for this engine. Which, we're going to replace it with actual longer bolts. I just want to see if they all go in. That's great. This engine is super nice. Aluminum heads everywhere all around the block. You can see it's got so much bracing. Can't really tell. We'll get a better look when we get it out of the crate and everything. But you can really get your money's worth. I was a little worried by the price, even though it's one of the cheaper engines from Ford Racing. It's like the most expensive thing I bought. So. But I'm very happy with it. 7.3, so I can't really get a bigger bang for your buck right now, in my opinion. But I think it's gonna be pretty sweet, different. The Mustang here, we haven't talked about it too much. It's a 2011 Mustang GT Premium. We got it. Let's see. It had a Coyote with a Roush supercharger on it. The supercharger and manifold are off now in the garage just because this car is sitting outside and it was already unbolted when we got the car. The previous owner had cracked the actual block. You can see here they had welded it. The story says like 3 times, I think, and it leaked every time, so that's pretty gnarly. But the plan right now is the supercharger and everything off this car is going on another build. We have another build going right now. It'll have its own episodes and everything. But this car got a 2015 Coyote with a 6R80 swap. So it's going to get the Roush supercharger, and this car is going to get the 7.3 Godzilla swap. So this weekend we're going to throw that 7.3 in, but the word on the street is that the control pack won't be released till mid-October of 2020 for the Godzilla. So the car is going to actually sit for the time being until we get a controller. But that's pretty much it for now. We'll probably tear into the car a little bit later on today, depending on how much sunlight we got. So we're working outside, so weather permitting. But alrighty, let's tear into it. Got the engine out, so I can show you here the weld job a little better that I was talking about earlier. You can see there's the weld, and while we pulled it you can actually see a lot of the metal shavings from where they had ground it. Here's a good pile of them. But we're gonna pull this clutch kit and flywheel off this engine and put it on the Godzilla. And we test fitted it earlier with the old flywheel from a 2014 Mustang we had, and it fit directly on, so that was pretty lucky. But we're not going to be able to use these long tube headers, so we're just going to run the stock manifolds the Godzilla came with. So I'll probably end up putting these on the Fairlane build going on. But the block is pretty much toast, but the heads, to my knowledge, are brand new. I saw the paperwork on them that they had just gotten done. So we'll save these for the other Coyote that we need that needs rebuild. It's got a good block, but it had a rod knock. So we just got to pull the front accessories off. Front here, the supercharger kit that was on it, we're actually going to take that and use it on another car. So just going to pull all this stuff off and then probably wrap this in plastic and put it away for a while until we get back to Illinois and rebuild it, or scrap the block and take the internals. But I can show you the Mustang here with no engine. Pretty simple. So the Godzilla actually has the same exact Ford compressor bolt pattern right on the side, and we did use a compressor from that 2014 Mustang that we had a while back, and it fit right on. And it actually has a power steering mount, the same power steering pump found on like a 4.6 from a SN95, and I had one sitting around that I put on it too just to see if it would bolt on, and it does. So for a car like my Fairlane that has the SN95 rack and pinion, that'll be great. But for this car, it uses the electronic assist, so won't be needed. But you can see in the engine bay, we didn't really ding it up too much. Minor scratches. The headers made it kind of a bigger deal than a stock application. We couldn't just lift the engine right up. We had to hook to the front to get a better angle to pull it out. But we had to reset and redo it once, but it wasn't too bad. So you can see we're just gonna clean it up before we put the engine in, hose it down, and probably put the mounts on the other engine if they bolt up. I have no idea if the Coyote mounts will bolt up. So Ford kept the 4.6 and 5.4 motor mounts and kept them on the Coyote. So I'm hoping that they kept them on the Godzilla, and then we'll just be able to swap these mounts, drop it right in. It's the next day. Now we went to O'Reilly's and ordered a pilot bearing. The motor mounts ended up being completely different. Two holes actually would line up, but the other ones I'll show you on the block later. They're super far apart. So we got to build some mounts, and we're going to put the transmission in and bolt it to the engine and use the back transmission mount to kind of put the engine exactly where we want. So then we'll just have to mess with the height and kind of left, right in the engine bay. So we're just out now. I gotta get a haircut. So, all right, we'll see you back around 2 o'clock when we get that pilot bushing. MT82 mounted up to the Godzilla, and we used the factory starter that the 5.0 had hooked up to the MT82, and there's a knock sensor and an oil pressure sensor on the Godzilla that ran into it. So if you use the factory, right here was the starter on the MT82 that was in the Coyote, and it hits the sensor, which is roughly right here, and then the oil pressure sensor, it hits the wires on the bottom. You could move the sensor, which I did, but I just didn't like that it still rubbed on the wires. So here is a 4.6 starter I've got next to it, and you can see it's much shorter, so it'll clear that, I think. And it'll definitely clear the oil pressure sensor, but the knock sensor we're about to find out. And this is a starter off of a 6R80 car, so I think it's pretty used and beat up, so I don't think I'm going to use this one, but this is just going to show you your options if you're got a couple extra laying around. This one's old, but I think I'm going to go with the one from a 4.6 just because I know it'll clear the oil pressure sensor, and I can relocate the knock sensor to another location on the block. So alright, let's install it. So we took the engine, put it in and out of the car like twice now. The motor mounts from the Coyote, they bolt up in 2 spots, but they're about 3 inches too far forward. So we're going another route, and we got 1/4-inch thick steel. So we're building these. We're gonna bolt it to the engine, and then we're gonna drop it in the car and use the transmission mount to kind of like put the engine in the correct spot. And then we're gonna put it up and down, measure side to side, and then continue building the mounts while the engine's actually in the car. And then we'll be able to take the mounts out, finish welding them, sanding them, and painting them, making them look good. So we're done for the day on the Godzilla swap. We still have to fabricate the motor mounts, but we're gonna save that for a later date. But we got the engine in, it's sitting here right now, the transmission's in, and I just have a block of wood sitting under it. So it does still move a little bit. But it's pretty much done, other than the mounts, and we gotta do some exhaust work yet. And then we have to wait for the control pack. That's about it.